Okay, with screenwriter Jane Dafoe, "Rewiring Jade" is the screenplay. Really interesting film. I like what you said in your blog interview. You're kind of you don't want this film to be pigeonholed in a sense where it could be a sport diagnosed as a sports film because it's an Ironman triathlon. It could be a film about trauma, but you just want it to be a film. You don't want it to be kind of like typecast in a genre. Would that be correct to say assessment?
Well, I think that's pretty close. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is a character drama or a dramedy, but what I didn't want to do is create like a disease movie of the week.
Yeah.
So while, in this story, the protagonist, Jade, comes down with chronic fatigue syndrome, I really strive to do sort of the opposite of make a disease movie of the week and approach it in a very different way. And also, I think there's a lot of greater themes that the audience can relate to beyond just the illness. The illness is a piece of the story, but not the whole story for sure.
Well, it's a great arc because it's about someone who suffers from chronic fatigue syndrome who competes in Ironman, which is the most emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting thing that a human being can do, right? So it's like going from one extreme to the other and what a human is capable of doing if they, if like they set themselves off to do that, and of course, all kinds of factors involved in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this story really is about, I mean, I think there's a bunch of things. It's about how people cope with trauma. So when we meet our protagonist, Jade, she is a very independent, healthy, active person who's kind of suppressing some memories of the past that I'm not going to give away the whole movie,
Yeah.
and just decides to sort of double down. And I'm gonna train for the Ironman, and I'm also going to take a promotion at work at the same time. And I think, we've seen many movies about people coping with trauma where they fall into depression or addiction, etc. But in this case, she doubles down and does more. And I think we've all can relate to that, where we see people in public life and or friends or family who seem to have everything together. But beneath the surface, there's a lot more going on. And because she decides to push through, then she comes down with this illness, which then robs her of her identity. And I think there's a lot of themes, um, you know, a lot of themes about identity in this movie that people could relate to as well.
So tell me about the how did you came up with this idea?
Sure, yeah, this film is inspired by true events. So it's not literally me in the movie, but I was a very type A go, go, go person who went on to do the Ironman and had a very demanding job at the same time. And I did come down with chronic fatigue syndrome, but I was sick for a decade. So I did not want to relive the experience of being sick for a decade. I didn't want to do a documentary at all.
Yeah.
But as I was recovering, and even while I was sick, I started to sort of see images of my journey as kind of videos in my head, almost, if you will. And I intuitively felt like it would make a good story. So I've shortened the timeline to make it much more accessible to audiences. I've taken some things that were very true. It's like I took what happened to me, put it in a blender, added some new characters, added the things that remain consistent are the way I felt and some of the obstacles, although the circumstances might be different. Some of the challenges that I felt or the emotions that I felt are the same. Put it in a blender, turned on the blender, and then made a whole new smoothie of a screenplay that really leans into a lot of relationships. So it's not just about Jade. This is a character drama, and there's a lot of very other interesting characters in the film
Hmm.
as well.
So have you competed in an Ironman before
I
personally?
have, yes.
How many you just did one?
I just did one. That was enough for me.
Okay. How like just be like just a little bit sidebar. How was that experience? Because I grew up in a very athletic. My sister still does triathlons. My dad has run multiple marathons. He always wanted to do a triathlon. He was obsessed with it when it was on TV. How like I'm just from a very generic question. How was that experience? It must have been unbelievable.
It was good, bad, and ugly. It was,
Yeah.
the training was harder than the race. Really, it's the training for a year that's very challenging. You're sometimes doing training for up to 25 hours a week, plus working full time, things of that nature. The race was very challenging. It was in Penticton in 2003 when there was the first giant forest fire there. So Penticton, BC in Canada. And they went ahead and did the race anyway because they didn't want to let the athletes down. So it meant that, my goal time of 12 hours was stretched into more like 15, and I have asthma and I was breathing in smoke for 15 hours.
Oh wow.
So it's like doing an Ironman in a forest fire, really. And that is very true to what happens to Jade in the film. So, and afterwards I felt really invincible. Like you feel like you can handle anything. It's unbelievable. But then all these very strange things started happening to me in my body, which was the onset of chronic fatigue syndrome.
So, okay, just so maybe just to give people an understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's like 2 miles of swimming, right?
It's or you guys do miles.
No, we do kilometers. So basically, I'm
You do
Canadian. So
kilometers.
basically,
It's 38, 3.8. Oh my God, I'm gonna get it wrong.
kilometers, yeah. So that's about
3.8
2.1
kilometers
miles.
swim, and
Yeah.
then 180-kilometer bike ride, and then a marathon
Okay. That's
in a forest
crazy.
fire. Pretty much is what I did.
Yeah. That's crazy. And you have to train all the time. There was a guy that when I go to the Y, he plays squash. There's a guy who's locker next to mine. He trains all the time. He's like in his 50s. He trains all the time for Ironmans. And he's like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. It's like I gotta keep training. And because if I stop training, it's like I don't know what's gonna happen to my body. It was like he's kind of joking with me, right? But I think that there's some truth to that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it can become kind of an obsessive thing, and in the film, the character Jade is so afraid of failing that she does even more extra
Yeah.
workouts on top of the workouts, right? So it can become kind of an obsessive thing, and there's nothing wrong. I want to make it really clear. There's nothing wrong with doing the Ironman. There's nothing wrong with
Oh,
pursuing epic goals.
yeah.
However, if your body is reacting like, it happened to Jade, like during the training in a funny way,
Yeah.
and you're just kind of going, whatever, 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 then there is something wrong with that, right? So if your body's waving a red flag saying, not so much, it's not for everybody, right? And so, yeah, I don't regret doing it. I mean, there's no point in having regrets in life. You can't go back in time.
No.
So, yeah,
What's made you why we're talking right now, right? So
yeah,
it's
exactly, exactly.
so, but at the same time, it's like you have that personality. There's a certain personality that competes in Ironman. You type yourself as a type A personality. That's the good, bad, like you said, good, bad, and the ugly. Like there's certain strengths to having that personality because you know, get stuff done. But at the same time, it's like sometimes you're too zoned in. You can't see the forest through the trees sometimes because you're like, and you need to succeed. There's that ego involved as well. I'm assuming, right?
Oh, totally. And
Yeah.
you sort of get, and getting back to the film,
Yeah.
you sort of get hooked into thinking that you're going to disappoint other people
Okay.
if you don't race. It would have been very reasonable for if we're getting back to the film to Jade to not participate.
Yeah.
It's smoky, it's whatever. Her friends advising her, it's not great air quality. You have asthma. Like it's okay to back out. And she's like, no, I'll judge me. I'm not going to back out. Right. And I think that that's where goal setting gets kind of dangerous. And I think that we live in a society where we elevate that kind of obsession, right? We admire that kind of obsession and that drive, which can be very healthy, but it can also be unhealthy.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, so let's talk about the script itself. So it says that you've made several you've been part of making documentaries. You referenced it before that you didn't want to make a documentary about this. So is this your first ever screenplay like that you've written?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So how was that like it's like it said you said you've been working on for like the last 5 years. That's a learning curve in itself. Like kind of like sit down, pen the paper, or uh, keyboard to final draft, and basically kind of write the story out. How was that process for you?
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a struggle for sure. I started out by taking a course in screenwriting, and then I would sit and stare at my computer and nothing would happen for quite some time.
Yep.
So then I hired a coach who was in the business just to hold me accountable and give me homework and make me write it because I also work full time. So it
Yep.
was very challenging. And so she really helped me get out that very first draft. I guess in the industry they call it the vomit draft, the terrible draft. But it's words on paper to work with, right? That was what she really helped me. And then it evolved over time. I would take breaks working on it because I work full time. And it was a bit of a struggle at the beginning because I wanted to be very married to what happened to me, but it wasn't necessarily the best story. So, so it helped me to take breaks because when I was distanced from it, I could say, okay, actually, changing it like this is makes a better story. So what I remain true to, is the experience of CFS. I actually watered it down a bit for the movie because people would just didn't believe what I was experiencing when I was experiencing it. And I didn't want to get into that. But I think so I stayed true to that and I didn't want to dramatize or make anything fake. But I ended up just, creating a story that, like the best story. And I feel like in the last year, all of the characters have really come to life. And they all serve their own purpose. They don't just exist to serve the protagonist. I'm really proud of that. And people seem to be very invested in the characters.
Yeah. 100%. It's like but at the same time, it's like sometimes people, I've obviously talked to people where you're writing kind of a loose autobiography. Obviously, it's like emotionally and from a thematic standpoint, you're kind of writing your own autobiography, but sometimes you get too close to yourself, right? Where you have to like stand back and like and serve the story, not serve yourself, if that makes any sense.
Oh, totally. And that's why I didn't want to do a documentary because who wants to relive a trauma of a decade? No, thank you very much. And that's why giving the character a new name, she's like me, but maybe a little bit quirkier. She's flawed like me, but maybe slightly different flaws, things of that nature. But some of the characters really are inspired by, real people, like not all of them, but like the character Kofi is a friend of Jade's who's from Ghana, and he's very much inspired by a friend of mine. And it's when Jade thinks she has nothing to offer anyone, she makes a new friend, when she's at her lowest point and thinks, what value do I have? And I think that sort of pivots us into the theme of identity that I'd love to talk about if you have some time.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So like you said, thematically, it's a film about who are you, I guess, like the identity of the things you have to go through. But go ahead. What's do you want?
Yeah, and I'm gonna just I was trying to think of how to explain this to the audience, and I want to engage them. Maybe they can do a little exercise with us as you'll just bear with me. I'm gonna try and sort of walk them through. But just imagine that all the ways we define ourselves, right? So sit with that for a minute. All the things like, Matthew, whether you're a filmmaker or a writer or whatever it is, a dad, a friend, all the things, we all have these light bulbs, say, imagine a room full of lights that have all these different parts of our identity and they're bright. And then imagine somebody comes along with a dimmer switch and they start to dim certain ones and you start to feel like you're losing parts of your identity. And it becomes very frightening. So you lose, so for the character Jade, she starts to lose her friends, her body self-image, her strength, her, capability at work, et cetera, without giving away the whole movie. And then at a certain point, all the lights are dim and then you find yourself sitting in the dark. And you feel like you've lost your core identity. You feel like you've lost the things, the athlete, the high performing, person at a job, the caring friend. And all you're left is you're alone with the darkness and your dark thoughts. So then that becomes your identity. And it's a very dangerous place and to sort of reside. And then if you think about somebody like the Mallory character, she's been in the dark most of her life. So Jade's friend Mallory also has CFS and she's been in the dark most of her life. It's frightening to go into the light. She doesn't know how to be in the light. She doesn't know how to be well. And then as, if somebody came along and said to you, hey, I can fix this dimmer switch. I can give you back these pieces of your personality and these things that you identify with. Would you want them all to come back exactly the way they were? Would you go, wait a sec, I think actually this is more important about me. I want to lose that. And I think that's kind of the choice that Jade has to face. And in my experience, that was something that was very real. I didn't want to come back exactly as I was before. I was a kinder, gentler, less driven version of myself. But some people wanted me to be the old version.
Mhm.
In the film, the Alex character wants Jade to be the old version,
Yeah.
right? And in my life, I literally had somebody a month into my wellness journey asking me what race I was going to sign up for. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you've not got the memo. You don't really understand. I mean, it's hard for them to understand what I've been through, right? And so I feel like the audience could relate to this because what did we recently go through? The pandemic, where
Yeah.
people couldn't go to their jobs and couldn't this, and things were taken away all of a sudden. and people were losing their minds, working from home and things of that nature. And then eventually, as things changed back, some people were like, actually, I realized I used to be in traffic for 2 hours. I didn't really like that. I kind of
Yeah.
like spending more time with my kid. You want the do-over, right? And so I
Yeah.
feel like in that way, the film could be relatable to a broad audience if they can see beyond the illness, right? Because it's not that many people that have, I mean, there's many people, but not, I guess, in globally, not that many people with chronic fatigue syndrome.
No, but at the same time, you're talking about like a macro, like people sort of like a macro theme that basically just like to share personally, like I'm a recovering alcoholic. So when I got sober, my friends and I totally reinvented myself because, like you said, that's what happens. You completely reinvent yourself, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'll take that. And I'll, like you said, the light bulb analogy that you gave, I'll take that, but I'm not going to take that. I'm going to change it. And all of a sudden, the people in your life are like, very close people in your life are like, well, where are you? Like, I want this person back. And then,
Exactly. I want my drinking buddy back. And you're like, that's not good for me anymore.
yeah. And
And
then
I
you have to
think
like leave those people because they're unhealthy for you, right? So that,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So that sort of gets into, without giving away the movie, some of the choices that Jade has to make with her relationships, right?
yeah,
It's not all, rainbows and butterflies and violins when you recover from something like that.
no,
Your life is you're not the same person. You see the world through different eyes,
yeah,
and you have to make difficult choices. So that is why I feel like the movie is like both inspiring and like surprisingly funny
yeah,
and bittersweet also. It's meant to be a little bit bittersweet because that, was my experience as
yeah.
well.
Like I said, on a macro theme, a lot of people can relate to that. It's like, obviously an obvious example is going to war, coming back from war, but even like kids who go to school and then they come back and they're not the same. They've experienced so much. They're not the same. And like you said, COVID, like nobody's talking about it. Did you notice that nobody really talks about COVID that often? There's like not nobody's ready for a movie about COVID right now. But thematically, that's exactly what happened. Everybody changed. Everybody's lives changed because of that situation. Because you were forced to change, right? And some people changed for the good, some for the bad, but no matter what, it changed, right?
And people felt powerless, right? They felt powerless. People that I have family members that are very much extroverts and love to be around people. They couldn't do that. It was very hard for them. Or then you discover that your friends maybe don't have the same beliefs that you do, and it's
Yeah,
super awkward and you can't
yeah,
go
yeah.
back,
There's a lot of
things of
that.
that
Yeah,
nature. Yeah, so I think, in that way it's, themes of friendship are also in this film as well. And the tough choices you have to make, or the fact that you think your identity, people like you because, I mean, it sounds really stupid now. They like me because I'm a high performing athlete. They think I'm cool when actually they really like you because you're a kind person.
yeah,
And really, what is your identity, and what really does define who you are as a person? And I was very much somebody who thought it was all the external things I did. And I probably latched onto those external things because I didn't have a family or kids or things that other friends did.
yeah.
So I was like trying to project some kind of identity, right? So I feel like, it's a very interesting thing to explore. And I,
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
And and make it entertaining like you did in your film. Because like I said, I think everybody can relate to that to a certain extent. And there's also that like sub theme of like people want you to not get better. They want you, they like you who you are because that's who like they kind of want you down in a sense, maybe subconsciously or consciously, but they want you like that because it, you know what I mean? Like there's those destructive personalities in our
yeah,
lives.
or people, they put you in a box, or
Yeah,
misery loves company. But I also think it is more complex than that too. And I hope
sure.
that, with the Mallory character, people see sort of beyond just like, if you're like 35 years old or something and you've been sick since you were 16 years old, you don't really know what it's like to be an adult and do adult things and be well. And so it's very easy for people to do a flyby judge and say, oh, she's a negative Nancy, or misery loves company, or you're a victim. But, I was in that state myself, like being ill for a decade and you don't have anything else except your symptoms. That's who you become. And it's a very dangerous, slippery slope to go down, but you can understand why, especially if you have an environmental illness. where your environment like is literally making you sick. The chemicals in the air, you're going to be lashing out all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah,
There's nuance. There's nuance. Like it's not like you said, the characters are not black and white. There's like they're not good and bad. There's complexity just like in all of us, right?
yeah, I tried very hard to do that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the humor in the movie if we have time to do that
Go
as
ahead. Yeah,
well.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like I tried very hard to make it funny
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons. Like one is like a breather for the audience, to let them really take a break from the heavy subject matter because it can be a little bit heavy. But it was also to take my power back from what happened to me. I'm not laughing at people who are suffering with CFS. I'm not laughing at the character Jade, but it's me giving the middle finger to the disease and
Yeah.
saying, you don't have the power anymore. I'm actually literally laughing at you. And that's something that I was taught during my recovery is to actually like laugh at your symptoms, which sounds bizarre, but honestly, it takes the power completely away from it. And I really wanted to do that because this was the thing I lived with it for a decade that was, almost destroyed me. And it was like me saying, no, now I have the power. I've taken it back. And I think some of the scenes are, I find them I laughed very hard writing them. So, and some of them are actually true. I won't give away which ones are true.
Yeah.
Some of them are shockingly true, just as written, and some of the more outrageous ones, but I won't, I'm not going to spoil which ones are true and
Yeah.
which ones are made up.
No, you like tone wise, you wanted to make sure it's not just like some like what did you call it at the beginning? Like some like movie
Like,
of the week or
after school special, disease movie of the week, Susie
I,
has whatever. Like, I wanted to do the opposite of that. I was
yeah.
really trying to do
I'm
the,
old enough to remember those like I come home from school in the 80s and
yes.
yeah. Let's do
Yeah.
20 minutes on anorexia and everything's good at the end, right? So
Yeah, exactly. The violins played, everything's happy. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make something that was a lot more, real and relatable.
yeah.
And the reality is too, when I was sick, sometimes I would have the worst day ever. And then later on, I'd find a moment of humor in it.
Yeah.
I remember like a quick story. It's not quite in the movie like this, but I had a cat and I used to buy these gigantic bags of kitty litter. And when I was fit, I would like lift it onto the conveyor belt. It was like 30 pounds or something with my hand. And I remember once people applauded at Walmart because I was so strong. I just went boom. And I was like, what? And then when I was sick, I tried to lift it and the bag caught onto the shopping cart and it
Yeah.
burst open onto the conveyor belt. So you're in the express lane with your one thing.
Yeah.
You've got 15 people glaring at you because they're like, clean up on,
Yeah.
and and I just like I fled the store. Like I ran out of the store. I came home. I was mortified. But then a couple of hours later, I realized that's actually really funny.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I grew up in a grocery store, so I've seen that like on a daily basis, and there's nothing to be mortified about. But that's the thing, right? Where like you're internal, you're like, and then all of a sudden through time you realize, okay, they say that it's laughter and sadness equals comedy, right? Like there's always that a little bit a tinge of sadness that makes
hmm
things funny, right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. But then it's about perspective. It seems like you have like, was this script writing like therapeutic for you in any way?
Oh, very therapeutic. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was extremely healing. And I first just wrote it just to see if I could write it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do it because I felt like I had it in me. And then this coach said to me, that she thought it was marketable. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And then I just kept going and going and growing and growing. And now I feel like, I'm super honored to have this podcast and I'm getting more publicity because this is an unproduced script. And I would love to find somebody who would, you know, make a movie. I would love like a US Canada co-production.
Yeah.
Calgary is a great place to film. The Last of Us was filmed here. Our dollar is really low in Canada, and we have great tax breaks. Here's my plug.
Like I told you, I'm Canadian too. So yeah, I
So
totally,
yeah, you know the deal.
I know the deal. Yeah. So you're based you're in Vancouver?
I'm in Calgary.
Oh, you're in Calgary. Sorry, I apologize. So
Yeah,
just two time zones away from us, from the
yeah.
the big Toronto, big city of Toronto. So You see the country's changing, right? So through many reasons, it seems like it's changed more in the last 6 months than it has in the last 5 years. So
Yeah, it's crazy. And Calgary is really becoming a like a little filmmaking hub,
yeah,
on its own. So, and there are not that many. Calgary gets to stand in for a lot of other communities, so there's not a lot of films that are actually, based in Calgary and filmed in Calgary. So this would be one. I mean, it's Calgary 2003, but I think that, yeah, I would love to see it made, and I can sort of, yeah.
so you're submitting, like I said, you're submitting the festivals, and that's your first time ever doing that as well. How has that experience been like for you so
Yeah,
far?
so I've won 6 awards so far, and so I mean it's the festivals thing is very overwhelming, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
there's so many choices, and it's hard to always know which ones are more credible, et cetera, et cetera. But I've won 6 so far, and I was really attracted to this festival because of the podcast opportunity and to have the ability to actually speak about my work because people read things differently, right? And you can't control that. So being able to like be part of the narrative and the conversation is I'm super grateful for that. And I've taken on, I don't want to jinx myself, but I've entered a few more very competitive festivals. So I'm hoping to have some success there and actually go to an because a lot of things were online during COVID, obviously. So I like to want to go to some more in-person festivals to really get out there and to meet some producers.
Yeah, 100%. And then I saw that you signed up on the screenwriters. We got a screenwriters group going on. They do like a nice little conversation. So hopefully you'll enjoy that as well.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of a lonely craft, if you don't have. I have
Yeah.
one other friend who's working on something, but it's kind of lonely, thing if you don't have people to talk to or just explore it, But it's a very fulfilling thing for sure.
So we asked you on the blog interview that you said it's a mashup between the Silver Linings Playbook and the Big Six. The Big Sick.
Yeah,
I said
not
sick.
sex. Don't say that. The big sick. Yeah.
Well, there's some sex in the Big Sick, but yeah. Uh, but basically, but you said we asked you also ask what film you've seen the most times in your life, and you put down Silver Linings Playbook. That's a big film for you.
I love that movie, and I was I think subconsciously inspired by it when writing this, and I actually worked with another coach, Chris Watt, who's from Scotland, and I
Yeah,
asked him and he's been in the business for 20 years. So what movie is my movie like? I'm struggling to say that.
gotcha.
It's sort of like The Big Sick, but not quite. But he said Silver Linings Playbook, and I was like, it's the best thing you could have said to me because I love that movie so much. Because it's got those like characters that are likable, but there's also moments where you don't like them,
Yep.
where you're frustrated with them, who have complex challenges. But there's also that nice sort of humor in there that releases the tension of the story. So and the performances are amazing in that. So
But it's about two damaged people combined into a non-damaged person. That's what the Silver Linings Playbook, I guess, is about. But your
I mean
film's
that's
not, yeah,
one way to look at it.
yeah,
Look at it, I guess. Yeah, two people coming together and helping themselves,
yeah.
in different ways. So yeah,
In learning to accept somebody for who they are, I guess, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's sort of thematically, that's what your film's about. So what's next for you? You're gonna write another screenplay, or are you just gonna keep pitching this one? Like, you got the screenwriter's bug?
Well, I'm gonna pitch this one as much as I can. I do have a sequel in mind that's not. It's only a little bit based on what happened to me, but it sort of continues the journey of some of the characters. And it's about. I mean, it's just in my head, but about being careful about what you manifest is what I'll say. So it's also got some tough themes in there as well, but it's not written yet. I just need to get this one going. Yeah, I would be very grateful to, yeah, partner with somebody who really understands my movie and what I'm trying to say, rather than putting me in a box, and I would love to be part of the journey of making the movie.
Well, congratulations on the success of this film. It's a really great read, and for your first script, it's phenomenal. It's a really fantastic job. Like I said, a lot of nuance, a lot of complexity in the characters. Is that arc? I kind of pigeonholed the arc as well with you. at the beginning, but it's like just trying to get the audience to understand like the journey of this character. But it's great. It's fantastic. So I wish you the ultimate best of success with it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.